Let's try it. It'll start. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we got some exciting stuff. We are going to start the reinstallation of the now completed, for the most part anyway, 5.3 with the new can, the DOD delete, the cleaned up heads. Guys, we are going to get this thing in the Suburban today. I've got everything lined up, but before we start that, there are a few things that I want to do before I actually set this thing into place. One of which is I bought a brand new drain plug. I went ahead and tightened that down. We got that in there. I'll list all this stuff in the description. I'm going to put a new gasket here on where the oil cooler lines would go. Guys, this motor actually came with oil cooler lines. The Suburban doesn't have an oil cooler, so we're not gonna do that. I'm gonna put a filter on it. We're gonna get the water pump into place. And then I do need to put the coolant temp sensor in the head and the block or plug in the backside. To me, that stuff's a little easier while we've got it out, so I figured we would tackle that first. You can see I have some parts here. I got a Rock Auto box, I know, because I ordered one part from them, but the rest of it, I've got a lot of GM stuff in there. You see a Moto Rad, that's actually the thermostat, which we may put on as well, but we've got some random gaskets, belts, got the water pump in this box. I ordered it directly from GM. So let's get started. We'll talk about what we're going to be doing as we go, and then we will get this thing hooked up to the transmission and hopefully back in the Suburban. We're going to start with the water pump, and so what I've done, guys, is off camera, of course we got the new pump and it comes with new gaskets. Make sure that you get those. If you order the pump that I list in the description, it will come with new gaskets, but I cleaned that mounting surface off one more time. I just wiped it down. But what we're going to do is we're going to start a couple of these original bolts, okay? And some people go back and forth on should you use like some sort of thread locker. I don't know how I feel about that on these. I've never had any issues not using it. Not thread locker, but like Teflon tape or something. I don't think we're going to use that here, guys. But we need to get these started, and you want to make sure your gasket's all lined up, of course. And once we get them threaded down, we'll cross path or go back and forth. So like tighten the top one on one side, bottom on the other, just like you would a wheel. And I will snag you the torque specs here in just 1 second when I get this somewhat snug by hand. There we go. Let me go grab my torque wrench and I will grab the torque specs while I'm doing that. The torque specs on these, 11 and then 22. So we're gonna get this, there's 11. Like I said, we're gonna crisscross, top, bottom, opposite side. We'll go 11 the first pass and then 22 the second. And then we're going to move on to something else. Now I'm going to go 22 and then we'll move on. Now moving on to this guy, which is our oil cooler or oil cooler block off, whatever you want to call it. I mean, if you have an oil cooler, guys, you can hook it back up. This motor that I got didn't have one, or sorry, the motor I bought had one. The original Suburban did not, so I'm not going to add it back on, but you do need this gasket, okay? That is important. We need that. I'll list this in the description as well. We're going to put this back into place. I cleaned both the surface on this and this part directly, and then of course I cleaned this part and the threads. And these go to 106 inch-pounds, so not a lot on this. Make sure that you're getting it on the correct way. I don't think there's not an up or a down, so I don't think you can screw this up, but be careful. And then we will get that snug down to 106 inch-pounds. Now, because we're here, I'm gonna go ahead and put the new filter on. So guys, what I do is I put I put oil in the oil filter so we can get, not as much of a dry start. I'm not priming this motor. We're basically just gonna trust that it's gonna pick up, and we're just gonna watch the oil pressure gauge. But I'm gonna put a new filter on, filled with oil. I always think that's a good idea. If you can, if you can put oil on it, do it. If it's one that mounts sideways, obviously that makes it hard. And then I have a ratchet to tighten this down. You don't have to get it crazy tight, but all right, let's move on. On to the plugs that go in the head, guys. They go down to 15 foot-pounds, but you really need to put some Teflon tape around them and make sure that they get started correctly. Don't cross-thread them or anything. I'm gonna put some Teflon tape around this one here. Hope if I went the right way. There's a certain way you go with the thread so it's not like backing the the Teflon tape off as you're going in. Just be aware of that. So we'll wrap a couple rounds in there and we'll get this in and we'll get the plug in on the other side, which like I said, guys, 15 foot-pounds. I generally take them out with a wrench and we'll put them back in with a torque wrench, obviously. We're gonna move on to the motor mounts because guys, we obviously have to have those in place before the motor goes in. And I chose to get new ones. One of my mounts was completely thrashed. And so I bought these. These are actually not GM, they're from Anchor. And Anchor makes a pretty good product. At least in the past when I've used it, I've never had any problems. So we need to get these on there. There's 4 bolts that start this. And these heat shields make things kind of a pain, but I think they're a good idea because the rubber is like really close to the header. So these are 15 millimeter. I'm gonna get them snugged up and then we'll grab some torque specs on that. Torque these things down to 37 foot-pounds. And no different than anything else, I'll probably go in a cross pattern. It is really, really tough to get up on there. There we go. So we'll get these snugged down, and I got the exact same thing. Guys, it's the same motor mount for each side. I chose to get 2. Seems like it makes sense. The other one didn't look as bad, but I don't want to have a problem with it down the road. Way more snug. Hopefully it'll line up when we go to put it in. I'm gonna pop the other one in off camera. Now you may notice that I put on the AC compressor bracket. Now guys, I didn't spend a ton of time cleaning it. I did wipe it down, but 37 foot-pounds is what it goes to. And there's, look, I mean, I could have spent a ton of time cleaning that up, but it looks okay. So now we're gonna put a 180 thermostat in. It's a little smaller. Okay, the factory one I believe is like a 190 something, but I wanted to put something, I didn't want a 160 in it because I wanted to still have good heat. I've never had an issue with it not having good heat when I put a 160 in, but sometimes the heater just doesn't get quite as warm. But we're gonna put this guy in. It just sets into the stock housing, which I took off the stock water pump. I didn't see any sense in buying a new housing. And so we'll get this in place next. And I think this is 106 inch-pounds. These are pretty small, 10 millimeters. So I'd say there's not a lot of torque that goes on this. We'll run them down snug and then I'll grab the torque specs. It's 11 foot-pounds, so not a lot. So we're gonna get that torque down, and then guys, I think, there was one other piece I'm gonna put on. I was gonna put on the coolant crossover, but I think I'm gonna wait on it. For one, I don't have the gaskets. I thought I had them here, but I think we're ready to hook this thing up, get it hooked to the transmission next. You can see now I've got this off of the engine stand. I've got it hooked to the transmission, guys. Just reusing our stock bolts. Remember the ones that have the extension here, they're used to hold like the dipstick tube in and several other things, like the fuel lines up top. But either way, I didn't put the ones that go into the pan in yet. We will do that once it's in the car and we're underneath. But 37 foot-pounds is what these torque to. Now we need to get our converter hooked back up. You can see we can't see the opening in the hole in the flex plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the motor over. All right, so there it is right there. And I'm going to be reusing our stock bolts. You can see all 3 of them there. I did clean them off. But we need to roll the converter over until we find the opening. There's one right there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start that one. Okay. Sometimes they're oblong, so I like to start it. I'm going to be using some Loctite. But what I like to do is if I get it started like that and then run it down a little bit, we can spin it over and get the next two in to make sure that we're lined up before we go torquing them down. Now these are going to torque to 47. Like I said, I am going to use some Loctite on them. I clean the stock bolts up. That is a 15 millimeter. Let's get that done. We now have that torqued down as far as the converter bolts. And remember, like I said, we use Loctite. So guys, we are ready to get this thing stabbed back in there. But before we do that, there's a couple things you need to take into consideration, okay? One, obviously, you can see I've got the hood unhooked, the strut that goes up, and the hinges so I can get the hood further open because I'm doing transmission and motor at the same time. The other thing is I struggled with this because I put the chain on and started lifting it off the mounts before I got to thinking about which way this comes off. So we need to make sure that our harness here, we need to get it on top of the motor, okay? So we can put it up like this kind of as we're going in with the motor. The other thing, guys, is remember I unhooked the AC as we were coming out. Probably gonna have to start a couple of those bolts while I'm going back in. Keep into consideration, you know, the wiring down here, your transmission lines, don't smash anything. Our fuel lines are gonna have to come up. It's gonna be kind of a trick because I'm doing this by myself. I may grab a bungee cord actually. I don't know, we'll just kind of see as I start to get it into place how things work. I'll probably get a bungee cord for now and get this up kind of out of the way until I get the transmission like kind of stabbed in this general direction. And then we can kind of, you know, work our way down, pulling the wire up as we go. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that, you know, there's no real good way for me to set up the tripod without knocking it over. I've got a little one, but it would fall over if I did it that way. So I'll kind of cut in and out and show you the progress. The other thing I did, guys, is because these are really, it's really common to strip the 3 bolts here. I went ahead and cleaned on my wire wheel over there all the threads out. So we've got good contact. There is a post that lies down in that area right there. You'll see that on your motor mount. So anyway, let's get started. Let's get this thing in here. Probably gonna put a jack in the back to kind of lift the transmission as we go in, but we'll get there. So you can see what I'm talking about by bringing the wires up. The bungee cord actually did help quite a bit, but guys, we're making some progress. We'll just keep lowering it down. As you can see, we're very close. This was already scraped up, but I didn't help matters. This was already bruised up a little bit, but either way, I could have taken that off. I probably should have, but let's keep dropping it down, see if we can get it into place and then start some bolts. Working our way back and forth, we got this thing set on the motor mounts. All right, so I've got all the bolts started and loosely fit into place. The 3 15s down there, kind of a pain to get to with that heat shield on it, and then the 3 on this side. The other thing I did, guys, is I went ahead and torqued the air compressor down. Remember, 37 foot-pounds. I kind of did that right before I set it finally into place, just to give me a little better access to the bottom bolts. You can get them out, but it's just a little easier when you got a little bit of play and the motor's up a little higher. So I did that. And honestly, guys, the only issues that I had here, like I said, I know I couldn't show you, but I had to lift the back of the transmission up just a hair to get it to kind of fly through the rest of the way and clear the crossmember here. But aside from that, we're just going to kind of start working our way through some of the stuff we want to hook up. The very first place I'm going to start, you can see I've taken my engine lift plate off the center. We're going to start there. So just to keep debris, like let's say a big chunk of dirt or something wants to fall in the center of the valley cover. I really don't want that. So I'm going to go grab that new piece and we'll show you it. Here is the new valley cover, which I'll be listing in the description, guys. This comes with not only the valley cover that seals off those areas that we plugged also, but it also comes with the gasket and new bolts. And so you can see it's completely flat on the front side. We are going to put a new oil pressure sending unit in there, but not worried about that right now. What I want to do is just get these hand tight, working our way from the middle out, similar to the way we would do a head. But you can see, make sure you take all your paper towels out. Like I said, I want to get this motor closed off. Now that we got these things snug down by hand, guys, we're going to go ahead and torque those to 18 foot-pounds. Now, there's nothing that says you have to go in a sequence, but I do. I start here in the middle. So just like I said ahead, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11th in the back. So you don't have to do that. That's what I'm gonna do, 18 foot-pounds. Now that we got the motor all tightened down, guys, I want to put, I've got a new transmission mount here. This actually came as a kit from Anchor with the motor mounts and trans mounts. So I'm gonna put this new guy in, these 2 bolts here for the outer, these 2 nut. On this, we'll go for the inner. Well, actually, bad news. That can't go on until the transfer case goes on. So in order to put the transfer case on back, guys, I'm going to put this, I'm gonna roll this thing, or push this thing, slide this thing underneath the Suburban here. I put these on here so I wouldn't lose them. And there is a seal. I don't know if you guys see this, but there's a seal and part of it, look, it stayed here. So I'm gonna clean that off, and I got a new replacement for this. So we will grab that at the same time. We'll put it on here, but I wanna clean that up. This old gasket material, I'm gonna go grab a razor blade, clean that off real quick. Once I got it all cleaned off, all the old gasket material, you can see I've got the new gasket in place, and I'll list it in the description as well. Just a GM part. All right, guys, this is gonna be quite a bit of lifting for me, but I think I mean, I got it out by myself. I mean, Cohen was out here with the jack, but you can't really balance this on the jack the way it's designed. So we'll get it in there. So let me catch up on what's been going down here. I got this guy up into place with the new seal. And then, guys, these are supposed to be, the nuts, the 6 nuts that go around the outside are supposed to be torqued at 37. I don't know how on earth you would get a torque wrench in there. I mean, you could put a crow's foot on it, which is what I tried, and I was able to get all of them except the one on the very top. So it's tight. You'll also notice that I put the 10 millimeter here that holds the wiring. I plugged back in the harness. On the other side, let me see if I can get my light up in here and show you kind of what's going down on this side. I got all the plugs that plug in kind of hooked up and routed where they need to go. I still got to put this vent tube. This vent tube needs to plug in up here to the transfer case. We'll get it plugged in here in a second. We need to tighten down our shift cable. And then, guys, this whole, like your fuel line, that has to be on the back side of the motor. It bolts with the 10 millimeter right here on the side of the transmission. I don't know if you guys can see where my finger's at here, right there. There's a 10 millimeter that needs to be hooked up. There's also a nut that goes on one of the studs on the back of the transmission, not the 12 o'clock position, but it'd be about the 11 o'clock position. So you need to get that fuel line hooked up there and on the back side of the head. Okay, so aside from that, you had 3 connections back here. Let me see if I can slide back. I know my camera's banging on everything here, but you have your 3 connections back here as well as your vent tube. There was a holder for it, but we got these 3 connections all hooked back up on the back side of the transfer case. I did have to lift it a little bit because I didn't want it setting on this cross member right here while I was trying to pull it forward and get the transfer case snug. So at this point, guys, we can go ahead and put our new transmission mount on. We could also grab our drive shaft and put it in. You can see, got the drive shaft in. Torque those to 15 foot-pounds. So the strap on the back there, those 4 bolts, those go to 15. So basically, guys, just slid it in far enough, and then you pull it back out to connect the back. Make sure your U-joints are good. Mine were all good, so I didn't need to replace them. The other things I've done, I put the this guy on the side of the transmission. This is like a heat shield of sorts. I know my light's like in a bad spot here. So I did that. You can see this shield, it's a 10 millimeter. I need to tighten it down, but the reason I didn't tighten it down is because I was putting the dipstick tube in, and the 13 millimeter that goes there, you can see on the stud, not the bottom one, but the one right above it. So guys, I had some issues trying to sneak that in, but I got that in. I put the fans in, and the only reason I put the fans in is because they hold the transmission lines in some spots, and I'm having issues getting my transmission lines to go back in their little holders here. So like this one here, this one, and then there's one up there. I also plugged in my knock sensors on both sides of the motor. They go underneath the motor mount. So underneath that, and then of course we've got our starter connections here. Crank position sensor, hooked it up. I hooked up a ground on the front side, right behind where the power steering pump will go, but we'll get up there later and look at that. But either way, I'm pretty much finished down here other than snugging a couple of these things up. I need to get this thing snugged down, and I need to get that 13 millimeter snugged down as well. So I was cruising along, getting ready to plug in the new front cover, and guess what, guys? It doesn't fit. So you can see that the new front cover came with a new sensor it's up here. It's already, this comes as one piece, but look, this plug is different if you notice, and that's because the other one had variable valve timing, so VVT. So there's a couple different options. You can buy a $30 plug, right? Or you can just swap this guy over in place of this. This plug is the exact same. It's the bottom plug here where you plug in from the bottom that's different. So what I'm gonna do is I've cut off the old piece. You can see I'm gonna transfer it over to this actual clip because the other clip doesn't really fit that well. So that's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna swap this to this. I've cut these off. I'm gonna tape these wires up really well, and then we'll get this installed back on the motor. I did not take the sensor out. We're using the original sensor, but we need this harness. I got this swapped over. This plug at the bottom doesn't fit quite as well, but it does go into place. You can see it kind of moved over a little bit, but we need to do that. Otherwise, we're gonna have to buy that extension or harness, and it's just not, I don't think it's worth the 40 bucks. Now that we have that installed, remember I didn't want to unhook my power steering, so I can go ahead and get that bracket back into place using the couple short, well, one short one that goes in the head or the block, and the other two that go in the front of the block and the head. Once you get that put into place, guys, 37 foot-pounds is what that gets torqued to. The next thing I'm gonna do is, you guys saw me do this on the engine stand, but I'm gonna put the harmonic balancer in with my installation tool. Now I don't have the bolt yet. I should have it this afternoon, but it's all gonna be in this video. But I'm gonna go ahead and use my installer tool, get the balancer put into place, and then we'll move on. I think after that, we'll go to the oil sending unit that needs to go in the valley cover. This, guys, I bought this. This is a GM replacement. Look, I sure would hate to have to pull the intake and stuff off. The other one was working, I know. Well, at least, I don't know in this motor, but the one that I pulled out. But we're gonna put this guy in, just threads into the back there on the valley cover. 26 foot-pounds is what that guy torques to. Now, here's what I'm gonna do, and I'm not gonna be able to show you much of it, but there was a 15 millimeter, I believe it was a 15, on the back side of this head for a ground. Guys, that strap, you can see it kind of coming down here. I need to put that back in place. I believe that was the only ground back there. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it on and snug down, and then, I'm not really sure, we may go back underneath. I may start cleaning. I've got to clean the intake is the problem. I'm not quite ready to put it on. I don't want to put the alternator on until the intake's on. I'm waiting on the coolant crossover gasket. So we'll just kind of see where we go after I get that ground bolted down. So after cleaning the intake a little bit, I've decided that we are ready to install it. But before we do, guys, this is always a good idea to put new intake gaskets on. I generally only buy GM gaskets. It's just what I trust. This had, if you remember when we pulled this off, it had Felpros on it, and yeah, just not my pick. Okay, these just snap on like that, and I'll list these in the description. Like I said, I choose GM parts because they last. But at that point, guys, just we can thread this thing in there and maybe start running some bolts in it. One thing you'll notice, see how I bungeed that up to keep it out of the way while we're going back into place with the intake. Let's set this guy in. Got this thing in place. It's not quite as clean as I thought it was now that I get this sun on it, but hey, it's got an engine cover. It's okay. Anyway, there's an extra plug in the back, guys. You're gonna wonder, like, when you're putting the intake in, like, whoa, what happened? Because we plugged the oil sensor in, the oil sending sensor, pressure sensor. But there's an extra plug back there, and the reason why there is, and there's nothing to plug it into, is because it used to go to the valley cover. Remember when we took the old valley cover off? This one does not have provisions for active fuel management or DOD. So we don't need that plug, so it's just going to hang out back there. You don't need to do anything with it, but we need to torque this intake down. Guys, I believe it's 89 inch-pounds. I think you're going to start in the middle and work your way out. There is a diagram online. I don't have it handy, or I would show it to you, but basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, I believe. Something similar to that, but you're working your way from the middle out, side to side. The torque specs, 44 first pass, 89 second. So it is 89, but it is a good idea to make sure you're coming down evenly and start in the middle, like I said, and work your way back and forth to the outside. Once I got that torque down, I went ahead and just plugged in all of our injectors. And then I also plugged in the fuel rail, which literally just pushes on. The evap, I plugged that line in up here to this evap solenoid. And then there is the PCV that goes back to the very back valve cover. Now, look, I've still got some stuff to do here as far as putting in. As a matter of fact, that coolant crossover, that's why I took the throttle body off. Guys, I'm afraid that we're gonna have issues getting that in if I keep putting stuff together. So I gotta wait on that. So I think we're gonna go back under, maybe get the prop shaft installed, and maybe a few other things, making sure we've got everything plugged in underneath. Now this may be a mistake because of the next step I'm gonna take, but guys, I did buy a new, see the grease on that. I bought a new seal here. Remember, we had to cut our piece off in order to get this loose. So before it goes on, I'd like to put another one on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop this one off and get this new sleeve in place. We can go ahead and mount the front one. And guys, I'm just using pliers to crimp these. You don't have to necessarily have that tool. Generally, you can get it close without it. So we're gonna give it a shot anyway. Let's get this cut off, this new one on, and we'll get this installed. Check this U-joint too. These are both good, I checked them. But you know, if you've got some play in the U-joint, it's a good time to replace them. Got the prop shaft back in place, you can see. I didn't tighten those bolts yet, guys, for the straps. And I didn't cinch down our cover back here, or that metal ring. And the reason why is our next step. And so let's go look at what we've got for our next step. You know, parts scattered everywhere, but I decided to get some Longtube headers for this thing. So we're gonna unwrap this, and what I'm afraid of, guys, is if I go ahead and cinch all that stuff down, I may end up having to pull that out in order to get these things in there. So I also opted to get some ARP bolts, just because I don't trust the stock ones, and I got some better clamps than the ones that these normally come with. So let's get this unpackaged, see if we could slide it up in there, and then maybe I can get up top and get it started. After fighting and fighting and fighting, trying to get that up from the bottom, I came through the top. Didn't have to take the steering shaft loose, didn't hit anything. So I don't know, guys, if you want to try to struggle and take it through the bottom, I took that prop shaft back out, still couldn't get it in. So came up here just to give it a shot, and I went ahead and put the O2 sensor in, but I had to take the O2 sensor in order to get it up through the top, but we're in. Now, no different than any other time, guys, I choose to use GM gaskets especially for exhaust manifold gaskets. You can see it says down, manifold side, makes it pretty dummy proof. Then, like I said, I opted to get the ARP bolts just because I know they won't break. Look, guys, there's a bevel in them. I don't know if you guys can see that on camera, but there's not on the other side. The bevel faces the head of the bolt, so the flat side would face the manifold. So how I do this by myself is I think I can reach over and get a couple bolts started, and because it's not wanting to fall out, which is good. And so that's kind of the way I do it. Now, I'm only going to put like 2 or 3 in. I'm going to go back down there and make sure I can still get my prop shaft in. I know we're jumping all over the place, but these just came in. These are those seals I was waiting on to put the coolant crossover in place. Now that we got those, we can put this in. It goes this way. With the 10mm bolts, and those go to 106 inch-pounds. I went ahead and put the throttle body back on now. I'm going to torque it down to 89 inch-pounds, and then I think we'll make our first pass on our bolts. I'll show you guys underneath here in a minute, but this fits incredibly well, this header does. Like I said, you have to put it in from the top, you can't put it in from the bottom, but man, it fits nice. Since I used a 10 point, obviously we're gonna have to have a 10 point socket, but 11 foot-pounds starting in the middle with the 2, working our way out. So the first pass, 11 foot-pounds, and then 18 the second pass. Well, I started to put the starter in actually a little while ago in this video and realized that, hey, you have to put a new crank bolt in. And you can't do that with the starter in place because you need the flywheel locking tool. So guys, now that I've got the header torqued on this side, I want to go ahead and put the other one on the other side, but I gotta do this first. So I've got the locking tool in place. You guys have seen me use that before. It's very handy. So let's get this in here. We're gonna get it torqued to 37 foot-pounds, and then guys, we're gonna need a kind of a breaker bar to get it to the 140 degrees past that. So I'm gonna get it torqued to 37, and then we'll go 140 degrees. We got that accomplished. I did go ahead, take the flywheel locking tool out, put the starter in. Guys, there's only a 13 millimeter and a plug on the starter, and then 13 millimeters to tighten it down. So now that it's tightened down to 37 foot-pounds, you can see I've snuck my header up through here, went through easy. And so now I'm gonna go ahead and get it started, and then we'll go under there and check it out. Now that we got both headers in, I'll take you back under here and show you kind of what we've got. So I did, like I said, torque the prop shaft to 15. Guys, look at the fitment of these headers. Now, the Y pipe, I don't know. I haven't got it up in here yet, but the headers, I cannot complain. I did go ahead and put my O2 sensor in. The cool thing about these is you don't need an extension harness like you would before, like on an F-body or something. It's this one's up on this side. It's relatively close, but you can still access it. And then the other one, of course, similar situation. It's, you know, not super easy to access. It's kind of close to the prop shaft, but I don't think we'll have any issues there. But now I'm going to try to loosely fit the exhaust like the Y pipe. I don't really know how it's designed to work. We're going to give it a shot anyway, get it out of the box and get it in there, because guys, I'm to the point where that's the last thing I have to do on the bottom side. Okay, I've got everything tightened up aside from I didn't torque down the bolts that hold the cross member in here or the ones in the center. And the main reason why is because I thought I may have to move it around to get the exhaust in. So I'm gonna leave it till last and torque it down last. But generally, guys, I don't even have a torque spec for this. I generally run the center to 37, but these I just cinch down as, you know, pretty much as tight as my impact will get them. And but I'll show you back under here once I get the Y pipe kind of aligned. We are complete down here, guys. I did have to take the cross member out in order to get the exhaust in, but you can see how the crossover pipe works. And like I said, I upgraded to the better clamps. Couldn't use one right here, but that's okay. So you can see there's one piece that comes out of the driver's side, and then like another piece here that Y's off. And then we come back to, I know this is above my head here, but you've got a reducer from 3.5 down to 3, a clamp here. So we've got 2 clamps, which I don't love, but then we have the factory clamp. It came with this little short piece to go into the factory clamp, which is what I wanted. So guys, we are completely finished under here. The only other thing I want to do is I went through and just double check, made sure everything was plugged in down here. I'm going to go ahead and push the dipstick tube in, but then we're going to let it down on the ground. And we'll start from the top, and we should be close to finished. I'm not going to put the sway bar back on yet. I'll do that at a later time. Honestly, guys, I just want to hear this thing run. Now, I did buy this new dipstick tube O-ring. You can see the old one on there, guys. I just want to make sure we don't have any leaks or any issues. So I'm going to use my pick, get this one off, put this new one on, and we'll get that in place and get it on the ground. Let's move on. The next thing I want to do is put spark plugs in. I like to do this before I put the coil packs on, mainly because, guys, it's just easier to reach things on both sides. Now, in the trucks, it's not as bad, but definitely on the F-bodies, I like to do it this way. But this is what I chose to go with. New spark plugs from AC Delco. I like to use the stock plugs sometimes. Sometimes I like NGK. But either way, I've got a couple things here. I've got some, that's not it. That's pipe sealant. Okay, so generally I like to use some thread treatment. So these are aluminum heads. These are steel threads. So I like to use some anti-seize, and I'm gonna go grab that. Other than that, I'm gonna get all 8 of these spark plugs in. Guys, they need to be gapped to 40 thousandths. They should be pre-gapped, but I still check them. And we'll get all those in, and then I guess we'll grab the coil packs next. Now that I've got all the spark plugs in, you can see I've put spark plug wires on. And guys, these are actually AC Delcos. They're actually off Cohen's Vet. Thing only had 11,000 miles, but this one right here is the only one that's actually touching. So we're gonna have to do something. We're gonna have to upgrade to some MSDs because we're gonna have to have ones that bend away from that. But out of all of them, this one's just barely touching, but it's gonna cause a problem. So we're gonna have to upgrade to some MSDs. But for now, this will work. But I'm gonna go ahead and get my hose clamps or my pliers and get all of these connections here. So like this, the thermostat, the heater core, I'm gonna get all those lined up into place, and then we'll grab the coil packs and get them on. I've got this one set up for this side, kind of cleaned up, and got the bolts to put them on. Guys, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bolts. A lot of times people don't put the 5th one in. You don't necessarily have to. I'm going to. It's pretty accessible on this side. It's the other side that kind of becomes the issue. So anyway, let's get the coil pack on. We'll put the other one on the other side, and then I guess we'll probably move on to the alternator at that point. That way we can start kind of routing some of our wires where they need to go. So we got the hose clamps on. We got both coil packs on. Guys, there's a bracket that holds your coolant lines that go up into the heater core there. I always try to put that on so they're not dangling around. The power wire to the alternator goes underneath that. It's clipped here, you can see. It's also clipped here, and then it runs back behind the throttle body. And then there's a ground here. There's 2 grounds. There's one that comes out of this harness, right? So that goes to the throttle body and the injectors. There's a ground there, and then the ground to the battery goes right here with that stud on the front. So the only 2 things that I'm really missing here, I need to put some more lume on a couple things that have been melted, but I need the pulley that goes here. So our idler pulley or our tensioner pulley. And what else? The intake, obviously, we need to get that. And I feel like there was something else that oh, the alternator. Yeah, so the alternator, 15 millimeters, they go to 37 foot-pounds. This idler goes to 37 foot-pounds. Guys, I've got a new belt to put on it. I'm not gonna concern myself with the stretch to fit alternator belt right now, or not alternator belt, but AC belt. I wanna see that this thing runs before we go putting that belt on, because if it doesn't, we have to pull it back out, we're gonna waste that belt because it's a one-time use type deal. So, yeah, I think at this point we'll cut back in when I've got the intake in, everything plugged up. There's only one plug left, and that's for, actually this could go ahead and go into place, I suppose, for the mass airflow sensor. So yeah, let's get those few things installed and maybe get some oil. I did want to show you, we got a new Gates belt. Guys, that's the routing of it. So around the crank, comes up around the water pump, back down, power steering, up alternator, idler pulley last. Swing that over, slide over the idler pulley. We are set to put the intake on, guys. There's one more thing. The vent right here on the top of the valve cover, that's gonna go into the intake. So there's a little piece that goes to there, but the rest of it is literally flathead screwdriver to put this on. We are set. I'm gonna grab some oil, put some oil in it. I've got the battery on the charger because I need to flash the DOD delete, which I will show you guys as I go. But I'm out of breath here. Yes, I know this is dirty, this is unlike me, but guys, I figured, look, if I cleaned all this up, first of all, I hate this piece, but you can see what I was talking about, that piece that connects there. I don't like this, and if this thing runs and we don't have any issues, chances are I'll probably be replacing this with like a cold air intake type tube or something to get rid of this. But that's why I didn't spend a lot of time. The alternator looks like crap too. I wasn't gonna buy a new one just because that one looks bad. So either way, I know it's not my normal go crazy clean stuff. I think we'll wipe some stuff down if the thing fires off and does what it's supposed to. We're gonna have to pull the belt off. The protective like plastic pan underneath to get the AC belt on anyway. So at this point, I'm gonna go grab some oil. We're gonna top it off. I'm gonna top off the coolant, and then guys, it's on to the computer. Well, it's go time. And when I say go time, here's what we got going on. I've got it keyed up. There's a whole lot of lights in the dash, which kind of concern me. Not because of the engine stuff, but because other things that could be going on with this thing. But here's also what we've got. You can see that I've got HP tuners plugged in, right? I'm using my cable, old school cable. Guys, you can't get the cable anymore. Now everything's digital. But anyway, so I went to the read icon, which is up top. Open HP tuners editor, went to read. Guys, you can turn off. We don't need to read the TCM. We don't need to read the fuel pressure or the fuel system. There's a fuel controller on some of these. So I moved that to, well, I said I need to move this to do not read. Thought I did that. Do not read, do not read. We are only reading the ECM. So the E38 ECM, that's all we want to read. Move all these to do not read. Once this gets read, we're going to save this file and we're going to open it up probably over on my bench, and I'll show you guys what we need to turn off. You don't necessarily have to turn it off right now, but I don't know. I figured I'd go ahead and do it. It could have some misfire codes if I don't, so I might as well go ahead and get it done. Here's the deal. All right, I open the engine diagnostic tab. So this is the file that we opened in the vehicle. I open the engine diagnostic tab. I go to, let's see, general, I went to fuel, and then there's some sub tabs down here, and I go to fuel enrichment or lean, basically lean/fuel. Check it out, DOD is disabled. Not really sure why, but it's not active. So like if I toggled it to enable, you can see it goes red. That means that I've changed it. I'm not really sure what's going on there. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go for some smoke here. We'll just diagnose things as they pop up if we get some error codes. I don't think, I'm not 100% sure because I've not done a VVT delete. I don't think there's anywhere to turn that off. I'll check real quick, but then I think we're gonna try to start it. You guys are gonna see real time whether we blow it up or not. I'm gonna open up HP tuners. I'm gonna open up the log. I think we're gonna get some codes, not deleting anything, but we'll give it a shot and see. Be nice if this, I don't like this new version of Windows. Can't find anything anymore. Anyway, let's open the scanner. Let's hook it up. You guys, it's gonna be noisy. That's for sure. We're probably not gonna have oil pressure for a second. We're gonna be watching that like a hawk. I didn't prime this engine in any way. So we're gonna give it a shot here. It says the battery's low. I don't know why the windows won't roll down. Oh, the window's down. Did I just do that? Tells you how much I'm paying attention. All right, guys, you ready? Let's try it. It'll start. Got oil pressure. Sounds pretty noisy. Looks like it's idling like crap. Oh. Yeah, it's good smoke. A little choppier than I thought it'd be. Kind of a choppy little cam there. All right, we're gonna shut it off. I'm gonna shut it off. I'm gonna check the oil. Woo-wee, it's smoky, but hey, it worked. So we're gonna check the oil. I gotta check some, I think I overfilled the coolant. Although now it's completely empty. We're gonna have to get some more coolant in it. But most of all, I wanna check the oil. And it looks like one of my cylinders isn't firing. That's interesting. One of my header pipes is kind of lighter than the other. Run for a couple minutes now, and coolant looks like it's back in check. Looks like there's some in there anyway. I'm gonna let it cool off, but look, this cam's a little choppier than what I thought it would be, but I think with tuning it'll smooth out. The only concerning thing is if you guys notice the header colors there, see that middle one? It's firing on that cylinder. But the problem is it should be a little darker. See how they're all kind of a golden color, but that one's a little off. Now it's still warm, don't get me wrong, I touched it. And then the other side, they're all good, he said.
No, the third one back.
The third one backs a little, but that could be, look, that could be part of the whole VVT. There was some things that said that you need to set to the camshaft to 0. I don't know, guys. We're gonna, that's beyond me. That's above my head. So what I'll do is I'll have a tuner mess with it. But what I wanted to do is make sure everything was good. So I probably should have taken you guys with me, but we actually drove the thing down the road. I just wanted to make sure before I did anything else. Remember, we didn't put the stretch to fit AC belt on. I haven't put the engine cover on. I haven't, I topped off the coolant. I think I'm gonna have to top it off again. Guys, remember the radiator's completely drained. So it runs. It's really choppy. It's kind of, it seems kind of like it's misfiring. I think it just needs a tune. But when you're first getting into it, it's kind of choppy, but then when you get into gears, it starts to smooth out. And I didn't go very far. I just went down my road. And I told Cohen, I was like, hey, why don't you keep your cell phone handy? I'm gonna take mine with me because you may have to grab the golf cart and drag me back home with the tow rope. So I didn't go very far. I didn't, look, I just wanted to make sure it went through the gears because, like I said, if it doesn't go through the gears, there's no sense in doing the rest of the stuff, right? So I'm probably not gonna put a transmission in it. At least not anytime soon. I would be really upset if it needed a transmission, but guys, everything, it's even got a full tank of gas. So around here, that's probably $80 worth of gasoline that I got for free. Now, I don't know how long it's been setting. I probably should pour some stuff in there because at least I'd like to run through a tank of gas, get that crap out of there. I don't know what was in it. And this, look, this is an 87 octane deal. I'm not gonna put any kind of crazy tune on it, but this is an E85 compatible vehicle. So a guy could run E85, but yeah, I don't think I want to do that. So either way, guys, I just wanted to make sure that everything worked. It doesn't look like we have any leak in any injectors. That cylinder started to darken up that I was worried about earlier. But all in all, I am happy. And this is where we're going to end this video. We got more stuff to come on this. And I would really like to have it dyno tuned. I may end up doing a street tune with a local guy that I buy a lot of my cams and stuff from, a lot of my parts from. I don't know. It just depends on if he has time to do it. If he does, I'd really like to have him do something like that. If not, then I may have to do a dyno tune. Guys, I don't really care how much power the thing makes. I just want it to be smooth and run good and not leave us stranded. That's the ultimate goal. But if you guys did enjoy this video, if you're excited about this thing, go down there and smash that thumbs up button. Guys, at least I can pull it in and out of the shop now, right? I don't have to block everything in the shop. While you're down there doing that, make sure you subscribe, ring that bell notification. That notifies you every single time we drop a new video. And stay tuned to see what happens to this thing next.